I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're exploring a wonderful book. It is called The Lev Effect, and it's written by a terrific author. His name is Sheldon Greene. It is a novel that is both heartwarming and thought-provoking. Set in a small-town Jewish home turned boarding school, this story follows Lev Kyol, a controversial yet inspiring figure who challenges stereotypes and brings people together. With a message of unity and goodness, The Lev Effect is a timely read that's been called dazzling and profoundly funny by the critics. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Sheldon, great to see you here today on Spotlight. Thank you for joining me.
Terrific to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about the Lev Effect. Why don't we give the folks at home an overview of the story?
Okay. Um, I should, I guess I should say that the metamorphosis of it was to hypothesize what if somebody comes to a small town and engages in various activities which are controversial for some of the people and challenging for some of the people, and at the same time, make other people believe, because the media's exposure of what he's doing, that perhaps he's the Messiah returned. And the question that I was raising is, well, what if that actually happened? If some guy comes and has these shadows of the Messiah, how would the public greet him? Would the Jewish community, for example, think, well, maybe he's finally arrived? Would the Christian community think that, in fact, this is a return of Jesus?
Mhm.
Or would there be other elements who would sow doubt and recrimination? So the book actually follows and parallels the Passion story, but in a
Mm.
very loose and kind of warm and to some extent whimsical way. Um, so the for example, we have to first deal with the question of who he is. He's an intellectual. He's a Hebrew and Jewish scholar from the Soviet Union at a time when Jews were essentially isolated and demonized in the community. So he really does not have a chance to uh, pursue his desires and his expertise in and so that creates an alienation. And then when he's actually brought to the United States, um, because this is the only guy they could get to run this new boarding school in this small town. Uh, he has an opportunity to really express himself, and he recognizes that as an alienated person, he really needs to identify with other alienated people in the community. So one of the first things he does, I should first say that he's the head of this Jewish day school,
Mm.
and it's a conversion of an old elder an old folks home.
Old folks
So
home,
there's
yep.
still a few of the old folks left there,
Yeah.
and there are also a lot of homeless people hanging around in the neighborhood. So he the first thing he does is there's a Palestinian kid in the school, a friend of one of the Jewish boys, and so he celebrates the Palestinian national days in a way that really offends the Jewish community. He follows this up later on by having a dinner, and the dinner is actually gruel for the people who have paid money to go there, and the people who are on the being celebrated and honored are the homeless people from the neighborhood. And so you can see that he's created kind of a dilemma for people because he's really challenging all of their conventions. And that those two events get the media engaged, and the media begins to play his chords, and sooner or later other people think, well, he is in fact the Messiah returned.
Yeah.
This is amplified by his death, and people then begin to think that in fact he's very much like the how Jesus died.
Yeah.
The reality that nobody knows is that he has had at the time a brain tumor, and that
Mm.
he was dying through that period. So this was an opportunity for him for the last moment to express himself with his integrity. So in any event, those are a few of the thoughts. I should perhaps carry forward that all of the things that he does do have the impact of bringing diverse segments of the community together and unifying them, so that when he's ultimately um, dead and somebody actually takes his his body away um, from the funeral home, the community is faced with another dilemma. What do they do? They want to have a funeral to celebrate his life, and he's not around. So conveniently, one of the oldest people living in the elder home there
Mhm.
is dead, a really beautiful teacher. And so they end up burying her in his coffin and celebrating a great kind of funeral in which all segments of the community come together to celebrate his life. And so the end of the story is that it is a situation which initially causes stress, causes antipathy, along the lines again of the passion. I won't elaborate on all the stories, but it is a unifying experience for the community. So that's kind of an overview. And
It's a great premise. It's a great story. And you got to wonder if a Messiah came about today, would he be crucified again?
yeah,
Because, like you said, he'd be a controversial figure. So amazing premise and wonderful execution. It's more than just a premise. It's a great
thank
story
you.
with a lot of nuance as well. This is one of many books you've written. You have eight
Yes.
novels out there. Tell us a little bit
Yeah, I
about
have
your
eight
writing
novels
career.
published, yes.
Tell
And
us,
they're all very different. Do you want me to?
tell us about your favorite amongst them all. Unless it's the Lev
Well,
Effect, then
it's
tell
like
us the next
asking
one.
if you got a bunch of kids, who's your favorite kid? They're
Exactly.
all very different, and I kind
Yeah.
of I love them all.
Yep.
So I can talk about a couple of them because they're very disparate. I would say that the span of the work that I've done starts in 800 AD
Hmm.
in Central America. And the last one is not necessarily the last one that I've written, but in
Right.
terms of the timing, it's in 2040 after the dissolution of the United States and after a long drought and other issues which kind of presage the circumstances that we have today in our divided society.
Let's equate a spectrum there from 800 BC to
800 AD. AD.
AD.
Yeah, it's
Um,
the
yeah, to the near future. Um,
yeah, I can.
if a Christopher Nolan Hollywood director were to come to you, let's turn one into a movie, which one would you choose?
Yeah, that's a good story because the first one that I wrote, one of the reviews was by the film chairman of the of at UCLA,
Hmm.
and he said, "Oh, this would make a great movie." So
And
they're all
which book was that?
cinematic.
And which
That
book
was
was that?
Lost and Found. It was the first
Okay,
one published by Random House, and it kind
wonderful.
of it's episodic. It sort of is follows the scheme or the format of a famous Russian book, Red Cavalry Tales. But it's a situation in which a Holocaust survivor who's brought to the United States during the war, and he's kind of the guy who's running the synagogue in this same small town where I was just describing the Lev Effect.
Mhm.
Um, and he has an opportunity to evaluate a lot of the things that are going on in the town in the context of his deciding whether he stays there or whether he takes an opportunity that's given to him to take reparations and go to Israel.
Hmm.
And since you mentioned that one, there are a couple of interesting things about that novel. Two of them particularly was one in which the a family goes to Europe for a holiday, and there's a rainstorm, and they end up spending the night in an inn, and just normally hospitable people in the inn. And when they leave in the morning, they find out that the inn is right across from Dachau, the concentration camp. And they leave, they go on because they have another schedule. So that's one of the issues. And I'll mention the other one related to this question. There, there is in the town a bookstore, a very kind of mysterious, arcane bookstore run by a an African, or rather an American Indian Jewish person. He's very idiosyncratic, and he has one of the finest collections of mystical Jewish literature in the world, where scholars come to expose themselves to it. But the town is really, it's just another place, and they don't really pay much attention to it. A fire occurs and destroys it, and it kind of passes without a lot of attention. And they replace the bookstore with some of the other, more contemporary things in the library. Well, what happened, those are both instances in which the novel is challenging the fact that at the time it was written, the American Jewish community and the community as well had not really paid much attention to the Holocaust. They kind of just denied it. And so coincidentally, at the same time that this novel was published and had whatever attention it had, some people began planning the National Holocaust Museum. So it's, for me, it's kind of an interesting,
Yeah, it's kind of a juxtaposition, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, but let me just move on to, if you have the
Sure,
time, let me move on
absolutely.
to, you asked about a book that would be really make a good movie. And I will say, talk about a couple of them. One, Prodigal Sons, it is actually one of my favorites, and here is
Hmm.
this is it.
Yep.
It it starts out that the hero of the story is an assimilated Jew, Polish Jew, who's an art historian, and it starts out in the war, and his family, similarly assimilated, are essentially incarcerated by the Germans, and he ends up going to work with partisans in Jewish partisans who are fighting the Germans. He then goes and participates in the illegal immigration to Palestine. He then is actually participating in one of the decisive battles in the War of Independence. Um, and then after that, he goes to a kibbutz and he is recruited to go back to Germany with a false identity to actually kill uh, Nazis who were left over who hadn't been caught in the network that the Allies did. He falls in love with a woman who is a pianist who's working on the Goldberg Variations, the Bach series of music. He then um, at the same time he's killing a few people and in the end of this, he has to decide whether to stay there and be with her or return to Israel. And that's kind of left up in the air, where essentially it's up to the readers to decide what he does. There are a couple of concepts in the book that underlie it. One is the end of ideology, so that the book is kind of a loose play on the Wagnerian opera, the Götterdämmerung, the Twilight of the Gods. And it also is a play on the Goldberg variations because she's rehearsing this through the book. So a
Mhm.
lot of the chapters have a relative thematic connection to what's going on in the Goldberg variations. So anyhow, that
Right.
kind of gives you an idea of what's happening with that. And
Well,
so it was
what I
a,
love about your writing is all the subtext. I think it makes it fascinating, it makes it interesting, and it brings you beyond just the storyline. It brings you to different characters and different places and different ideas and thoughts. And so these books are multi-layered and are
yeah,
wonderful. The book we've been talking primarily today is called The Lev Effect by Sheldon Greene. He is a prolific author who's written many novels, 8, as a matter of fact, I believe the number is. This novel, The Lev Effect, is both heartwarming and thought-provoking. It is set in a small-town Jewish home that is turned into a boarding school. This story follows Lev Kyol, a controversial yet inspiring figure who challenges stereotypes and brings people together. It's a
yeah,
wonderful book.
right.
It's a wonderful read. As Sheldon mentioned, it parallels the Passion of Christ, and it is a wonderful tale for sure. Sheldon, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the experience, and I hope that didn't put too many people to sleep.
Not at all. You're a great writer and you're a great storyteller. Wonderful work here today and on these books, of course. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.
Okay.